traffic manager, and here it's a smart home, so everything's standard so far. House in the suburbs of Vienna, everything's standard. But yeah, my interest is smart home, so my house is not standard. And let me see. I'm talking about talking house today, and who knows? So doesn't know this picture in the background. Well, that's from the early 80s. It was a talking car. And when I say I have a talking house, everybody thinks that it was like this Knight Rider, so that I could, I don't know, have a small chat with my house and interact directly with my house. But it's a bit different. And if you remember some episodes of these movies, very interesting was that whenever this car identified something, it said, Michael, that's the actor, my sensor identified some danger, some risk, or whatever. And that's interesting, because in my house, I also have some sensors, some bus systems, pretty much the same like in this case here. I have KNX, EN Ocean, One Wire, 6LoWPAN, LAN, and of course the internet, which is also a sensor in my case for weather data, weather alerts, or Google Calendar events, or whatever. So these are the input devices for my house. And when I say to somebody my house is talking, yeah, first of all, some technical background. Talking means I have a TTS engine, text-to-speech engine, that translates text that comes from the sensors into a voice, which could be defined in the configuration file, and in a defined room. My output devices are the sound card. My PC is located in the living room, so there I have a sound card with loudspeakers, speaker boxes. And in the other rooms I have squeeze boxes. These are internet radios, so I'm able to play the sounds, the output there as well. And the triggers presence detectors, so that means the house knows where the person, it's not able to identify the person, but it knows where the person is, and plays the sound, plays the text there. So that means, beside this trigger for information messages, is the presence detector. Alarm messages are played everywhere, every time. So it doesn't matter if somebody is there or not, even if I'm not at home. Information messages don't only make sense that they play when I'm at home. It's not useful when my house tells that, for example, a window is open and I'm in the garden. Nobody would realize that. So that's the technical background. It's still something new, the talking house. And this is from Geek and Poke, you may know that. This is an example how the guys, when you say somebody, I have a talking house, the things that you interact with in these kind with your house. And very important is the second picture, where the guy asks the house for their opinion. What do you think? I would never ask my house for an opinion. But let me tell you a true story. It happened this weekend on Sunday. I was in the garden chatting with my neighbor. My son was playing in the garden. And my neighbor's son came over to us, played with my son. And later on they went into the house, playing indoor. And suddenly Philip, my neighbor's son, stumbled out of the house, ran over to us, and screamed that my house was talking. So it was a bit, let's say, surprised that a house with a verbal output was not really an important message. The house just told that the windows in the first floor were open. But this reflects the impression when somebody comes to me and the house starts to talk. When a roller shutter is opening or closing automatically, yeah, that's nice, that's okay, we're used to that. But the voice output is something new. And the demonstration before with this pre-fall sensor, with this alarm, would be a good example. Why only a beep and not a text output? When we again compare that with a car, which is in our days high sophisticated and a lot of technology inside, this is a photo from, well, it's not my car, but it's the same model like my car. When you're driving a car, you have a very strictly defined position, which move your seat 20 centimeters front to the back, and you have a very defined direction where you look at. So you should look front window. Whenever there is an alert, something you have to know about, a simple beep would be enough, and maybe some text message on the information panel here is enough, because you're not able to move inside the car. That's a bit different in the house. When we take the example from the free fall sensor, you have an alarm, something is beeping. The clock is beeping. You have to stand up, you're watching a movie. You have to stand up, go to the text panel, and have a look. It could be that this is something important, and you're glad that you stood up, but it could be that this is, well, just a weather alert you're not interested in because you closed all your windows. So here a text output would be more sufficient. You could sit down, watch a movie, and your house tells you, yo, it's starting to rain. For example, you could listen to it and you're not interrupted. For example, another example would be that you could get your emails. You sit down, your house alerts you when you get an email. No need to search for your iPhone, for a smartphone, and then at the end you see that it is spam from Amazon or whatever. So your house could tell you that you got a new email from Amazon. Or in our cases, a real-world scenario, my wife would have an alarm clock, so the squeeze box is controlled from the house, and we had the alarm clock set to 6 o'clock, 6:28 approximately, because my wife was interested in the weather forecast. And at the end, she never heard because she fell asleep immediately after the alarm clock rang. And so we decided that the house should tell us the weather. The real-world scenario we have in our house is the first time in the morning. So that means in the morning is identified with the sleep button. We have a sleep button in the house. When you press the sleep button, which awakes the whole house, the first time you enter the living room, the house tells you the weather forecast for the current day. So with different sources. The current temperature is taken from the KNX sensor on the roof. The weather forecast comes from the internet. Another possibility would be a weather alert. You may know that the ZDMG, this weather institute in Austria, offers a possibility that you could register with your postal code and you get a short message when there is an alert for your region. That's good, it's interesting on your smartphone, on your telephone. But when I'm at home, my house could tell me the weather alert. And when I'm not at home, I'm not interested in it. Why do I get this short message? So another possibility where this text output is useful. Here is some output which is useful. You see, for read, you may have other needs. Problems with the heating system. I had this last year. My solar heating system had a problem, and usually nobody goes to the cellar and checks the solar system, its pressure in its tubes every day or every month. You maybe do it once a year, maybe a bit often. In my case, it was frozen, it was damaged, and the solar system, the collector, was too high, and no temperature came into the heating system. My system told me that there was something wrong. The difference of the temperature was too high, so I had an output here. Whenever there is something wrong, my house is telling me. Open windows, very interesting, again, real-world scenario. When we leave the house, press the presence button, so that changes a bit the functionality of the heating system, and when I'm not at home, it will not tell some information messages through this DTS engine. But what it will do when you leave the house and you press the presence button, it will tell you if there are open windows or maybe some doors to the balcony or whatever. Room temperature warnings, very interesting when you, especially toilet for example, go to the toilet, open the window, and you forget to close it. So it's getting cold, you're heating for your garden gets warmer, global warming, and you pay a lot of money because of that. So we have room sensors, temperature sensors inside of the house. We have the window sensor, which indicates that the window is open, and we have an outside temperature sensor. So my house is telling me that we have a temperature alert in one of the rooms, and it will only tell me if the window is open. But then we have an output that it tells me, for example, on the toilet on the first floor, the window is open. Please close it because it's getting cold. Security, very interesting. If you have an alarm system and there is an alert, something is beeping, but you do not know where it happened usually. And with a text output, you're able to get more information. No need to trigger an alarm with every movement. For example, when I hit the sleep button and I have a movement in the cellar, then my house is only telling me that. This does not raise an alarm. I could decide what I do. I hit the panic button or whatever. Maybe it's just me picking up a beer from the cellar. So no need to raise an alarm. Or again, weather forecast, weather warnings would be one very useful implementation. We have the weather forecast. I do not have the weather warning right now. And I've implemented the iPad and have the output here. So these are outputs, text outputs I have implemented in my house right now. And I think in the future, yesterday my wife came up with a new idea. She had the clothes in the garden to dry, and suddenly it started to rain. And rain central in the roof, so why doesn't the house tell me that it's starting to rain? What she will do then, that's up to her decision. So that was the output. I've been asked before if I have a text input with my house. And the answer is no, because of several reasons. Here is a short overview of ways to interact with the house. When you think that a house now gets an information source for your life, like a smartphone, you need to interact with it. First of all, we have the manual interaction, like sensors, pre-fall sensor, I've seen before, touch screen, maybe a handheld device, smartphone, tablets flying around everywhere in the house, usually. So we can interact. That's the way I use to interact with my house. Verbal interaction is critical, because you need microphones in every room. And my car has a voice recognition, and to be honest, that doesn't work. So you have two options: either you send everything to a service from Google or Apple with Siri, or maybe some trigger words to trigger this transfer to these services. But locally, inside the house, I do not have the CPU power to process that. And yeah, it's difficult because you have to learn the commands. So really, free speaking, it's a bit too early to have that. Then visual interaction, I think it's Microsoft Connect with this open source API. A friend of mine is implementing this right now. He's working in his house, and in some rooms he's trying to implement the Microsoft Connect as an interaction method. So we could then, I don't know, with gestures, do something like opening the door, or no, don't let him in, or whatever. So could be defined that. Interesting for me would be wearables like Google Glasses or smartwatches or Neo. I'm not sure if everybody knows what Neo is. This gadget brand measures the muscle movement. So that will be a way to interact with the house, to be integrated. Also has the possibility to locate the person. So depends on which room you are, and you have different actions with a movement. For example, in the living room you make this, that means you shuffle through your music library or whatever. So that is the way how I think to interact with a house. And if we think back to the first picture with the Knight Rider, you may remember when Michael Knight calls his home office, his cabin, he always did something on the roof. So real, in the early 80s, real voice recognition was not the choice like today. I've never seen that voice recognition has been implemented in one of the buildings or in a real world scenario where we move through the room, maybe with a smartphone. That all works. So that's pretty much all. I had a very small speech because I want to reserve a bit more time for questions. It was not very technical. If you're interested in the backend, I can talk a bit about the backends.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So we need the mic. Question. somehow similar to our topic or to what we are doing.
Yeah, but in my case, the house was talking and you're a smartphone.
Yeah, that's why my question is somehow related to a smartphone. Because I would say my experience is that smartphones are the most personal devices. So why don't you use your house to talk through your smartphone or to talk you through your smartphone to your house? Because it's mainly the thing that you carry with you.
Not inside the house, and that's the main topic. When I sit in front of the TV, I do not have the smartphone. Not always, I do not have the smartphone next to me.
Okay, so it means that you're mainly broadcasting messages in your house.
Right.
It means as well for, let's say, guests who are in your house, they do get the information as well.
That's correct, yes. That's the reason why I'm interested in wearables, to identify the person in the room. Like the example I brought up before with my neighbor's son. Nobody else was in the room or in the house at all. It was only my son, 3 years old, so he's not interested in open windows, and my neighbor's son, who is also not interested in open windows. But my only way to detect if there is somebody is the presence detector, and I'm not able to see who this is.
Okay.
So, but again, to your question, smartphone as an input device is great. So OpenAHP, this is my backend Open Hub. It supports voice recognition for some commands you could learn as an input device, but not as an export device. Because I'm not sure how you handle that at home. Do you have your smartphone always next to you? Do you carry it around? Usually, especially my wife, smartphones, wherever. Suitcase.
House with my smartphone.
Yeah, but that does not help if the smartphone tells you where it is and you're able to hear it. If you have it in your car or wherever.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Reinhard Haberfellner. My question is how much do you care about the sound quality of the house talking to you, and how do you handle the volume? Because there must be very different kind of volumes for background noise, watching TV or reading a book.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have predefined volume sets for each room. So that means for one room it's predefined. So it does not matter about the background noise. Usually in a house, when you live at home, the background noise is not changing that much. Maybe you watch TV very loud and could be that you're not interested in messages. You would disable this message. You would have a button or a scene where you have watching TV or not wanting to interrupt it. So in the bedroom, I have a lower volume level than, for example.
What about sound quality?
The sound quality is quite okay. This Mary TTS is an open source library for text output. You could define the language. You could define some effects. The sound itself is the voice, if it's male, female. So it's quite okay. It's in German. The first implementation was in English. Not useful for a 3-year-old son. So I changed the library now. So Mary TTS, the quality is understandable. You would not give him a Shakespeare poem to read or something like that. But for information, it's enough.
One personal question in general, because we're having only 1 or 2 women here. What does your wife say to all these technical gadgets in your house and all these, let's
To
say,
be honest,
broadcasting information? Is she happy with it, or
I see some people are laughing. I have to tell you the story how it all started. We built our house in 2006 and with automatic wall shutters. And I wanted to have a central button. So I started with this house automation system. And then one come to the next, and we had fire alarm system and so on. And most of the ideas came from her, like the weather forecast, like the open window. She did not like open window. She came to the toilet and it was cold. And then she said to me, why isn't it able to tell me that the window is open? Like the example I brought before with the rain. She had the clothes outside in the garden, and it started to rain. It was, I looked outside the window and said, it's raining. Go out and take the things in. And then she came up with the idea, why isn't the house telling me that? So most of the ideas are from her. like the open windows when we leave the house, she always forgets to close the balcony door. Why doesn't the house tell me that? She came up with some other ideas as well, like shutting off the stove when we leave the house in the kitchen and so on. But that's nearly impossible to do because it doesn't work. Long story. But she likes it, as long as it works. And to be honest, I only had one downtime when my heart was crashed since 2006.
Any question? No? Okay, thank you, Peter.